closer to go to the same school as him. If his memory serves him right, in her eyes, all guys were just pathetic creatures who only pay attention to looks. So what had changed? The girl calmly replied that her opinion hadn't changed much. The first time she saw Hanul was under the bridge. Back then, she was still in the 2nd grade of middle school and was on her way to her uncle's house. It was the day right after a downpour, so the current was very strong. Then right in front of her eyes, the girl fell into the water. She couldn't do anything since she was on the bridge, but still she tried to get the attention of others to call the emergency services. And at that moment, one man jumped right behind this girl without a moment's hesitation. Then she realized that he didn't even know how to swim, so he jumped in after her without a second thought anyway. That's how he caught Haru's attention. He thought he might be different from the other men. The man exhaled and said that it didn't seem to be the first time he acted on his instincts alone. But still, they had a problem brewing. He wanted to send him to a mixed martial arts tournament to make some money for him. But since his niece was showing interest in him, he couldn't use him as he pleased. The girl got flustered and started waving her hands, saying that it wasn't that. He just caught her attention, that's all. The man raised his hand, calming her down, and said he was just pretending he didn't know anything. That question aside, he told the guy that this Gang Dae-chun decided to participate in the greatest teenage mixed martial arts tournament. But why is he so obsessed with it? The girl replied that she wasn't aware of all the details, but Hanul's close friend had recently stopped coming to school. Around the same time, Gang Dae-chun dropped out of school and disappeared. Uncle asked if it was possible that the girl he had saved back then was his close friend. 3 men were walking down the sidewalk, 1 in front, 2 behind. Walking towards them was a girl wearing a long beige coat and carrying a bag in her hand. It was Se-young who was walking with her head down. Without noticing the first man, she bumped into his shoulder, fell to the ground, and her apples scattered. The man looked at her angrily, called her a goddamn bitch, and told her to watch where she was going. The girl remained silent, looked down, and started picking up her groceries. The man looked at the girl kneeling in front of him and asked if she was ignoring him. Did she want to die? He grabbed her coat collar. She continued to remain silent. He yelled just to look at her. She was starting to piss him off. Did she need to be taught a lesson? He swung around to punch her in the face, but then his hand was intercepted. The man looked at the guy in front of him and asked who he was. Leon asked, "Isn't he ashamed to behave like that in front of a girl?" The man asked if he was crazy and wanted to hit him with his fist, but the guy easily dodged and then kicked him in the legs with his foot and hit the back of his head with his hand, causing the man to flip over and fly headfirst into the wall. The other 2 went over to him, helped him up, and as they left, they shouted to the guy that he was dead. Leon looked at Se-young and asked if she was hurt. No need to thank him. The girl remained silent as she continued picking her apples. The guy crouched down beside her, saying that she really wasn't saying much. Can she stand up? The girl shook off her sleeve where the guy touched her, stood up, told him to get lost, and left. Leon was left staring at her in surprise. Hanul sat down on the couch holding his head. He noticed that he was wearing his glasses, and he wondered when he had put them on. Once he was wearing his glasses again, everything that had happened then began to feel like a dream. When he couldn't see anything clearly, he felt as if the whole world was against him. But to his surprise, it only gave him confidence in his abilities. Now that the glasses are back on, he feels naked. But one thing he remembers clearly is the feeling of relief when he defeated the bandits. It was as if all his sins and shame had been washed away by the wave. After that, there was only one thought in his mind. He wanted to destroy them again. Perhaps it was at that moment that an uncontrollable urge to beat up those scumbags was born in him. Just then, the door opened and Haru entered the room, asking if he was awake yet. Receiving an affirmative answer, she added, "Uncle was right. When he has his glasses on, he becomes much calmer." The boy corrected his glasses and asked what she was talking about. The girl came to her senses and said that she just wanted to say that it was like he was a different person with his glasses on. Hanul scratched the back of his head, and Haru added as he walked out that the others had already arrived and were waiting for him on the first floor of the dojo. He said he was on his way and followed her. In the empty room, the teacher was standing at the blackboard with large sheets of paper. Across from them on the floor sat Leon and Hanul, with Haru standing next to them. The teacher pointed at the blackboard with his pointer and said that he would now explain the nature of the tournament. The qualifying round of the greatest teenage tournament to be held this month is called the GT League. The GT League. The greatest teenage league and blah 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 blah. Anyway, the important thing is that they only accept one entry per month. He pointed to the diagram on the board and explained that, for example, only 32 people from Myungel village would be able to participate in this league. After the first preliminary match, depending on whether they win or lose, the judges will start calculating their points. If the points they receive are higher than the other 32, you can participate in the tournament. But more importantly, Gang Dae-chun is already participating in this tournament. The man smiled slyly, and Hanul's eyes rounded. The teacher went on to say that they knew nothing but his name, for the organizers of the tournament were careful to conceal all information so that the participants would not be massacred. But Gang Dae-chun had already reached the third-level champion title, so he was already in the league. Therefore, Hanul would also have to break through to the level 3 champion level to meet him. Hanul excitedly exclaimed that he wanted to sign up for the tournament too then. His teacher told him not to worry as he had already signed him up for the tournament. He remembered that 80% of the profit made from this tournament goes to the teacher, right? But then Haru became indignant and asked her uncle, "What does 80% mean?" The man spread his hands and said that it was his own decision, he didn't force him at all. But then he looked at Leon and asked, "Why is he sitting so quietly? Isn't there any questions? This is his first tournament, right?" But the guy at this time was looking at the floor and thinking about that girl. She wasn't wearing a school uniform. Maybe she was in college. Why didn't she like him? Is it because he's a high school student? The teacher yelled at him, asking if he had any questions. The guy perked up, raised his hand and asked loudly, "What type of guys do girls like?" Everyone froze in embarrassment, and the man with a twitching eye clarified what the guy had just asked. The guy started to get worried and made excuses that it wasn't for him, for a friend. But the teacher said it's not like he doesn't have any friends. Leon exclaimed that he did have friends. The man was surprised, saying how strange it was that the grandson of the owner of Hyungsung Corporation had a crush. The boy shouted again that it wasn't. Walking down the narrow streets lit from the signboards, Hanul thought he should go home. If he was dragged into an incident like last week again, he wouldn't be able to participate in the tournament. However, he was constantly looking for places where bad guys might be hanging around. Even though he was terribly scared, he couldn't stop his legs, as if his whole body wanted to do it. He wants to experience that feeling again. That feeling of relief when he beats up those thugs. That feeling of release that he had been missing. Just then, someone called out for him to come over. There were 3 guys standing in the alley leaning against the walls. Hanul's heart was beating frantically like it was trying to jump out of his chest. I wonder why he's here. He seems to be regretting it already.